Hello and welcome to another episode of our Chief Information Security Officer training. Today's topic is going to be interesting because many organizations really don't understand what shadow IT is all about. So, in order to get into today's session, we are going to have an opening context so that participants can understand how shadow IT could pose significant risk to their environment. So let us take, for example, a financial organization. Employees make use of tools to make work more collaborative. Tools like WhatsApp, Zoom, ChatGPT. And these tools are not officially approved by the IT security team or the risk and governance team. As such, the board has not given approval. Staff would be using these tools to communicate and to make the work move faster. However, this will pose significant risk because the IT team cannot ascertain the kind of data processed on such platform. Hence, they have no control over such platform. So a department could be using Zoom for meetings because team members work remotely. However, these Zoom meetings will have recordings and will also have customer information discussed. This will also pose risk because the personal information shared on such platform will not have any protection from the IT support unit. Now, imagine if after such meetings, we also have some employees use ChatGPT to analyze information. It means that your data is already being processed on ChatGPT platform, which your board has no regulatory powers to carry out oversight function. So shadow IT is a big concern for chief information security officers. And this topic is very relevant considering the fact that AI and cybersecurity risk will pose a lot of significant compliance and regulatory risk moving forward. So, with that, we introduce shadow IT. Today's session, we are going to define shadow IT, explain what constitutes shadow IT, and also explain deeper reasons why employees adopt shadow IT. We'll also look at the compliance gaps and also go through some test exercise to validate our learning experience. So, shadow IT simply refers to IT technology solutions, applications, services, or devices that are used within an organization without the explicit approval, knowledge, or oversight of the central IT security team or governance team. So imagine if employees use specialized tools to make their work easier, but these are not documented. So there are no controls, there are no security plugins. IT cannot be able to back up data processed on such platform. That is what constitutes shadow IT. It has an advantage, but also bring a lot of security risks to the business environment. And as a CISO, addressing this risk is very important and helping your team members understand why they should not use applications or devices not approved on your infrastructure. So, what are the common ways shadow IT can come into play in an organization? So, looking at software as a service and cloud applications, business units may work independently. And in order to achieve certain goals, they may adopt sharing tools that are not integrated in your core infrastructure. Tools for project management, tools for marketing, tools for AI analytics. This will pose unknown data storage issues because such free software like ChatGPT, we really don't know how much of our data is at risk. Where are these data stored? What are the retention period? We can't answer those questions because there are weak security controls and undocumented data flow. Now, when we also adopt browser extensions, that could also pose risk, such as granting excessive permissions and taking into cognizance that some of these web extensions may have vulnerabilities that have backdoor to our personal device. So when you connect your system or your device to solutions that are not part of your IT infrastructure, it means that a part of your company is somewhere that you can't control the extent which it will be used, because you store your customer data, you process your employee record, and these are personal data that may even go as far as collecting card details, which becomes more complex. Now, looking at working from home with the COVID-19 and companies adopting that because of transportation issues, people now work with personal laptop. They also use their home network, and they sometimes share devices of family members to use your corporate email. These devices may lack endpoint protection, and this leads to non-compliance with your security policy if you have one. So, bringing your own device poses shadow IT if not well managed. And if there are no policies, it becomes a big risk. So, fragmented security posture, such as departments having their own tools, which IT is not aware of, may lead to quick fixes but long term security risk. So, it is ideal that even if local teams have to work independently, IT has to be aware of the software they are using, the devices that will be accessing these applications, so they can have a digital map of where your data are stored and processed. Let's look into the use of USB drive and removable devices like hard disks. When you make use of USB drives, the extent to which that data will be used cannot be controlled, because any document stored may likely not have encryption and may not have any means of protecting the data, including messaging apps for document sharing. And these things are significant when data breach forensic investigation are carried out. So, as an organization and as a CISO, understanding the shadow IT in your environment is very important and should form part of your KPI. So, what makes employees adopt shadow IT? Some organizations may take a lengthy time to approve processes. Business team, in order to achieve their goals, may bypass those long approval processes and adopt solutions. So let's say, for example, you have a corporate environment that makes use of Teams and not Zoom, and there's an urgent meeting, but the admin is not within the business premises, and a team member says, "Can we just go for Zoom, a free 40 minutes account to do this. And you have your discussions on Zoom, and Zoom is not approved by your board, that could pose a shadow IT risk. So, bypassing your IT for immediate goals to be achieved may solve a problem, but over a period of time creates issues that goes beyond your IT to resolve. You now have to look at regulatory bodies coming over to do their oversight function. Now, some organizations they have distributed teams across different countries, across different regions. So you may have inconsistency, especially with time. So this can also lead to the IT security team not being aware of some integrations on time. So having a risk compliance environment that meets today's challenges will involve building the capacity of the CISO to address some of these shadow IT concerns. And that would include retraining the CISO, getting the CISO to adopt technology tools that can detect when shadow IT can pose significant risk. Because sometimes solving a problem creates more problem. And a team member who wants to jump into the next meeting using a platform that is not approved by management may lead to a significant data breach. Working from home and storing data across the border because of technology integration will also make tools that are personal to be adopted. So, take for example, you are using your mobile phone, and that mobile device has a backup on Google Cloud. But for you to access your Google Cloud, you need an authenticator. This authenticator may not be approved by your management, but you go ahead to use it. If over time a security issue comes up due to that software you are using, the impact will go beyond your own device. It may lead to reputational issues on your organization. So, when you have staff working from home, you also need to make sure there are controls to forestall some of this risk. Software as a service is now very common, and some of these software come as freeware, whereby the barrier to use it is minimal. And these tools are adopted without getting permissions that are appropriate for the IT team to be aware that such integrations are being done. So IT team have to come up with trainings to allow employee understand the software and hardware that are permitted to run on the corporate environment. Because if anyone can connect to your network, if anyone can use any device to access your IT infrastructure, be it your network or your servers, that is a security risk, which, if not detected, may be exploited by somebody with ulterior motive. And as a board member, you should be concerned about the shadow IT risk because this risk will create attack surfaces your IT team may have little or no knowledge about, and that may be devastating, not just to you, the business, but to customers, because it will undermine your data protection and privacy compliance efforts. And your third party and fourth party risks becomes even broader because detecting security risks becomes more difficult. So shadow IT often emerge not from negligence, but when the business growth and the IT security team are not on the same page. Because team members want to achieve their goals, they want to use ChatGPT, good. But has the board approved that? Team members want to use Zoom, and Teams seems to be what the company has already paid for. But getting the Teams account set up is always difficult because the admin may not be available at some point. So you must align your governance and risk management with your business growth. So even having meetings with vendors on platforms that are not approved by your team may be a security risk. So you could tell your vendors meetings can only be done on ABC platform because that is what is approved by management. So shadow IT is not an IT problem, just as I've mentioned. It's more of a governance and risk issue which the business have to address. So if you have key questions, you are free to drop them on the chat box. We are going to take those questions and try our best to address each of those questions. So to move further, we'll look at the compliance gaps that shadow IT creates, one of which is privacy compliance gap. Now, imagine if you have no knowledge about the lawful basis of processing data because they are not documented. Imagine if consent is not sought from data subject. Imagine if legitimate interest is used as a valid means for data processing without conducting an assessment to evaluate the potential risk. This not just creates non-compliance with data protection law, but puts your business at a very high reputational risk because someone may get full knowledge about your practices and report it to the regulatory body who now imposes sanctions on your business. So understanding all your data points is very critical as an IT expert. Where are data stored? Where are they processed? So we can have mitigating controls that are efficient and proactive. We also have issues when it comes to data minimization. Most of the tools that we find user friendly may also collect excessive personal data and retain data longer than we expect. Imagine you ask ChatGPT a question, and in order for you to get a detailed answer, you put in some personal information and sensitive data. You never can ascertain how long that data will be stored by that platform. You never can tell if that platform will also sell that data to business interests who need such information. And this violates the data minimization principle. Now, data subjects also have rights when you look at every data protection law. And having a centralized platform makes it easy for anyone in your team to rectify data, erase data, and make use of data in a lawful manner. This may not be achieved if you have shadow IT in your infrastructure. An employee may have the staff details stored on his personal laptop and you are not aware. The date of birth, their year of graduation, their salary scale, and If a data breach occurs, you may not even be aware it is due to that employee's fault. You may link it with somebody else, maybe a vendor who has such related data. So organizations must find a way of detecting shadow IT and working out a means of minimizing shadow IT within their environment. Not every device that are used for personal use have security controls like antivirus, encryption, access controls. And you cannot easily perform audit trail on people's personal devices. So the likelihood of regulatory sanction is higher when shadow IT exists in your environment. Some of your devices may also replicate data for purposes that you may know and you may not know. Take, for example, redundancy. This data may be disclosed to other bodies, either for security reasons or compliance purpose. This may not pose a compliance matrix if those parties are across the border you do your business. So take for example, you have employees that use a software, but this software has their data center in, say, the United States. And the United States comes up with a policy that every data process in our jurisdiction must pass through certain clearance. And that entails that people health record are disclosed to bodies or people who don't need to know. People's financial transactions are disclosed to bodies or parties who don't need to know. So that also poses risk. What if that is misused? So as a CISO, you should go beyond your asset inventory and look at what are those modern ways of mitigating cyber risk. And shadow IT detection is one of those modern ways because this will help your business to be resilient and mitigate emerging risk. Now, data retention is something that not every legislations have come up with a detailed way of addressing it because the responsibility is now given to the data controller. And data controllers most times are profit driven. So if there are no laws that are specific with timelines on how data should be kept, they will keep it for as long as they should or they wish. So regulatory bodies have to come up with a uniform way of ensuring that every business retains data based on their need, based on the adequacy of what that data should solve, and how important it is to the business to keep running services. If not, when you fill a form on any platform, they may decide to keep it for longer than what is required. And when you ask them, they will say they have a legitimate interest. And this risk is even more broader when shadow IT systems become involved because there are no approval, there are no consequences for keeping this data longer because they are not even known by your IT security team. Another significant compliance gap is the inability for your IT team to remotely delete this data. Because if, for example, there is a stolen laptop and it is reported to the IT team, and the IT team have this on your Active Directory, this device can just be kept in a way that only the data becomes what? Something that you are not concerned about. But when you don't have that on your Active Directory, when you don't have a map of your device, you can't control it. So ordinarily, the IT specialist will just remotely wipe every data on that device because they have a track of it. But if it is not known, even if you report it, there's little or nothing they can do because they do not have the administrative rights over that device. So for you to securely delete data, it has to be part of your IT infrastructure. And that's why having remote wipe software installed on your devices is very important. Because if there are cases of device theft, you won't be bothered much about the data getting into the wrong hand. Yes, the device has been stolen, but at least the data, which is more important, the personal information, the sensitive data, can be remotely deleted. And this is a gap that shadow IT will pose. So when we look at shadow IT, enforcing any administrative action will be very impossible. This can lead to reputational damage and customer trust will also be affected because if customers complain they are getting unsolicited emails and your IT team have no control to detect where that is coming from or stop it from reoccurrence, that is going to be a governance failure on the part of your organization. So you must be sure that shadow IT is minimized. Employees who want to connect to your infrastructure should use devices that have been approved. They should use software that have been approved. And they cannot just connect with their own hotspot because that can also pose risk. So you have to have multiple ISP in case of downtime. So shadow IT will be something that will become a major concern as data security and cyber security becomes a key attention. Many financial institutions still find data protection as a burden. Not until we experience a ransomware or phishing attack, we don't see reasons why we should conduct vulnerability assessment. We don't see reasons why we should train our team members. We don't see why we should have an information security policy that is detailed enough to mitigate emerging risk. So, at the end of today's training, it is good you discuss with team members that yes, it's easier to integrate, use softwares to make work easier. But what if that software has a vulnerability and your IT security team cannot resolve it? That will lead to business interruption. It will lead to financial loss. It will lead to reputational issues. So nobody is saying don't use applications such as WhatsApp, ChatGPT, or Zoom, or any other application that you can easily integrate to make your work easier. What we are saying is that the risks and management have to look at those applications and see that they fit and meet the minimum security requirements to integrate in your corporate infrastructure so that whatever risks they will pose, there will be a solution that can be implemented to curb a data security risk. And your IT team will have an understanding of the infrastructure and all possible integrations. So, we are going to look at some of those key questions that you've dropped on the chat box so that we can address those questions before we go for the quiz And I'll also be sharing a website which you can use to evaluate the cost of a data breach so that your team can be able to talk to management and the board in a way and manner that they see that data breach has an impact: financial, regulatory, reputational. So we'll look at our website, which you can use to talk to your key decision makers about the cost of data breach. We'll also go through the quiz, but let us take some key questions so that we can address them before we go for the quiz session. Okay, there's a good question here. How often should organization review and update third-party cyber risk management policy, especially for rapidly evolving threats? Now, there's really no definite timeline like every year, every 6 months, or every week, right? However, once you have a significant change in your business process, once you integrate new vendors that pose a different form of risk, once your regulatory body come up with a new guideline, it is expected that you review such policies. And if within a 12-month calendar, your regulator does not come up with a new guideline, they don't come up with any significant policy that will allow you to have some updates, your business may have done some integrations with new vendors with different patterns. That calls for a review. So once you notice there are significant changes in your business process, you have to review your policies. So the next question is, how can organizations balance between automated monitoring and manual oversight in supply chain risk management? Also very interesting. Now, automated monitoring is like you having a security operations center. You will detect this risk rather than depending on somebody to report. Now, not every organization will be able to have an automated means. And for automated means, you also need to back it up with somebody to also manually review. Let it not be a false signal. You understand? So, why we encourage automated means for real time, there's a difference between I was attacked and I feel that we are being attacked. So, real time monitoring will tell your IT team it's like we are under an attack. So you have to be proactive rather than being reactive. So if you are doing manual, you're only reacting, right? A lot of people woke up, they saw their account has been what hacked. But let's say you have a solution that if somebody tries to make an attempt to your account, you get a notification. At least you would have seen it. So businesses must go far from reactive to proactive. And that's why we support automated monitoring tools. Some of these tools are not free, they are expensive. And you also need to look at what best integrates with your system. So keep the questions coming before we go for the quiz so that we can be able to address those key areas you have concern. Also, there's a WhatsApp group for CISOs, which we manage, and that has been very instrumental in helping financial institutions in Nigeria get up to date information. So, I will also be dropping that link so that if you are not on that WhatsApp group, you can also join. One thing about that group is that once you have regulatory updates, you should be able to get it on that group. And members of the group are very supportive. They also help you when you have some informations that you may have missed from your regulators. They also post it there. And if you need some compliance help, you have people who are knowledgeable enough. So I encourage you to join. Uh, But that's based on the fact that you also have to give consent, right? So it's not as if we're going to force you to join the group. The link will be posted on the chat box. And if you so wish, you join. But I encourage you to join so you can get up to date information. So let's go for the quiz session before we take the other questions. So the first question is, which of the following best defines shadow IT in modern enterprises? Which of the following best defines shadow IT in modern enterprises? So we have option A, option B, option C, and D. So if you have the answer, you can just drop the option. Which of the following best defines shadow IT in modern enterprises? If you've been following through with the session, you should know the answer. It's obvious. Okay, I have B. Is B the answer? Is B the answer? Let's find out if B is the answer. Okay, the B's are coming. So B is the answer. So shadow IT refers to systems, applications, services, or devices used within an organization without formal approval, visibility, or governance, regardless of intent. Somebody just shouted me now that even some CISOs use shadow IT. So how much more other employees? So as a CISO, if you are also guilty of using shadow IT, I think after today's session, you should take a new leave, a new step, because this is also something you should avoid. So the next question is, which of the following is most likely to constitute shadow IT today? Which of the following is most likely to constitute shadow IT today? So we have option A, option B, option C, and D. Which of the following is most likely to constitute shadow IT today? So I'm seeing a lot of B. Is B still the answer? I'm seeing A, B. Are you going for A or B? Don't tell me you're a political CISO. So let's see what the answer is. The answer is C. The answer is C. Unapproved software as a service tool acquired independently by business units are a common modern form of shadow IT due to lack of security, privacy, and compliance oversight. So, question three says, what is the most significant privacy compliance gap created by shadow IT? What is the most significant privacy compliance gap created by shadow IT? So, we have option A, option B, option C, and D. What is the most significant privacy compliance gap created by shadow IT? Okay, someone just said I almost got nabbed by NDIC for shadow IT. That's interesting. So I can see my triple A microfinance bank friend. It says B. Let's see. Correct. Shadow IT often process personal data without documented lawful basis, privacy notices, or consent mechanism, creating immediate regulatory non-compliance. Thank you for that. So question four says, why does shadow IT pose serious data residency and cross-border data transfer risk? Why does shadow IT pose a serious data residency and cross-border transfer risk? I believe we know what data residency is. It simply means where data is stored at a particular point in time. And cross-border simply means when you process data and that data is stored outside your jurisdiction. So imagine a software company is using a server in India. So that's a cross-border data transfer because that data is being processed outside Nigeria. So what's the most appropriate answer? What's the most appropriate answer to this? I'm saying C, I'm saying B, I'm saying C, I'm saying C. Okay, the answer is C. Many shadow IT tools store and replicate data across unknown jurisdiction. Yes, because you never can tell who the vendor of that IT solution is, because sometimes they don't put their details, especially those free software, right? You can't really tag it with a brand, you understand? So that can pose risk sometimes. So the fifth question goes like this: why does shadow IT pose a serious data? Oh, I think this is repetition. Why does shadow IT pose a serious data residency and cross-brand transfer risk? Okay, okay. So we will go now back to the questions. We'll go back to the questions and try as much as possible to address those questions. Meanwhile, I'm going to drop the link to the WhatsApp. If you want to join, you can join the WhatsApp and get up to date information. So, just as I promised, I'm going to be sharing a website we can use to calculate the cost of a data breach. Now, I'm going to also put the website on the chat box so that you can also have it, because the essence of we being here is to improve our skill and knowledge when it comes to cybersecurity. So I'm dropping the website on the chat box so that you can also on your own try it out. It is databreachcostcalculator.com. Databreachcostcalculator.com. So let me just navigate around it so that we can see how to use it. So the website once again is databreachcostcalculator.com. So when you are with your key decision makers, because we had this question in the first session we had today, somebody asked, how can I really get board members to understand the impact? So I'm going to assume this is a finance institution. So I'll click finance. I've clicked on finance. So I'm going to estimate the number of employees. So let me go to five, let's say 501 to 5,000. But many of us may not fall within that threshold. So let us make it more realistic. So let me do 1 to 50. Yes, many of us may fall between 1 to 50 employees. So now they are not asking you the data type affected. So let's say personal data is affected. Let's say health record is affected. Let's say biometrics is affected, right? We are now assuming we have a data breach in our ecosystem, right? And this data breach now leads to us trying to estimate what will be the impact. So we are trying our best to get management to see the potential impact. So we've been able to tell management that, oh, personal information is affected, health record is affected. We also have financial record being affected. We have some payment card details affected. You understand? So what does that tell us? What security measures are in place, right? Multi-factor authentication may be in place, and data encryption may not be in place because we are a mid-sized organization. Do we have monitoring tools? We don't have monitoring tools, right? So let us calculate the cost. So if you click on calculate the cost, you would be able to get a breakdown of what this will pose in terms of financials on the organization. So with this, you can be able to explain to your management that this will be significant. Take, for example, the reputational impact is 100%. You understand? So you have a risk score of 74%. So with this, management can be able to say, wow, we don't have any insurance, because as a mid-sized organization, you may not take cybersecurity insurance seriously. So you could see that you will be left to pay the penalties, to pay the lawsuit alone, and also to carry out remediation. So this could cost as much as 56 million $432 252, something within that range. But this is just an estimate, right? So this tool is handy for CISOs because you want to get your management to see what a data breach impact will look like. So when you tell them, see, we have people's personal information, we have people biometric information, we have trade secrets, we have classified information, we have source code data. If these things get into the hand of a fraudster, the impact will be much more than we even anticipate, right? So this tool is handy for CISOs, you understand? So you can play around it. It's very useful for you to talk with decision makers, you understand? And they will not see reasons why they should have multi-factor authentication, why they should also have data encryption, why they should have privileged access management. Because if all these things are not in place, impact of data breach becomes higher. So if I were you, I'm going to bookmark this and use it as a learning guide for decision makers. So with that being said, we are going to meet tomorrow by 11 a.m. to continue the training. We'll wrap up the training by Saturday. Saturday we have two sessions, 11 and 2 p.m. I believe by the end of this training, you'll be more equipped to face the emerging cyber threats and help your organization to stay out of the high risk cybersecurity landscape. Thank you very much for staying tuned to us and participating in our training. Don't forget to join the WhatsApp group to get detailed information about cybersecurity and data protection. So we'll meet tomorrow to continue the trainings. If you have any question that has not been addressed, you can still drop them. We're going to take those questions before we go. If not, you can drop them on the WhatsApp group so we can also address it there. So if there are questions, you can drop those questions, please. Can we have the materials? I answered this earlier. Yes, the materials will be shared, but you will get a mail that will tell you how to access it by the end of the training. So by the end of the training, you get a mail that explains how you can have access to the materials. All the website we'll be using to train you, because we'll be giving you some website you need as a CISO. You understand? We'll also put them on that email so that this website can also help you have some tools to communicate with decision makers and detect risk. So tomorrow we'll also share another interesting website for CISOs to play around with. So thank you very much and till tomorrow.